Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening a file that I think a lot of people think they know, but the reality is, it's so much stranger and honestly, more tragic than the headline version.
It's a classic business case study, for sure.
We are looking at one of the biggest business collapses in American history, and we're doing it to answer a question that I think haunts every business leader. How do you have the future in your hands and still manage to let it slip right through your fingers?
It's a great question. And usually when people tell this story, they tell it as a story about technology. Oh, they missed the boat. But today, we're going to look at it through a completely different lens. We're looking at ecosystems.
Right. And to set the stage for that, I want to take you, the listener, back to a very specific moment in time. January 2012. It's a bitter cold month in Rochester, New York. And inside the headquarters of Eastman Kodak, a company that had been an icon for 130 years, a brand that basically invented the idea of capturing memories. Lawyers are filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
It wasn't just a bankruptcy. It felt like a funeral for the analog age.
But, and this is where the dramatic irony just kicks in so hard. In that very same month, January 2012, a little startup called Instagram is acquired by Facebook.
For $1 billion.
Exactly. Instagram had what? 13 employees. It had no revenue. Kodak had invented the entire industry. They had tens of thousands of employees, patents up the wazoo. And yet, in the same 30-day window,
one ecosystem dies and another one is crowned king. It's just, it's the perfect storm of business history. You have the death of this analog giant and the rise of the digital platform happening almost simultaneously.
Okay, now I have to stop us here because I think most people listening are nodding their heads thinking, yeah, I know this story. Kodak failed because they were dinosaurs. They just ignored digital photography.
That is the myth. It's the cocktail party version of the story. But if you actually look at the data, it's just factually wrong.
Factually wrong.
Kodak didn't ignore digital photography. They invented it.
Yeah, let's look at the specs here. 1975. A Kodak engineer, Steve Sasson, builds the very first digital camera prototype. I mean, it was the size of a toaster and took, 23 seconds to record a single image to a cassette tape? But still, it worked.
And they didn't just sit on it. They invested billions in R&D over the next 3 decades. In fact, and this is the part that blows people's minds, if you look at the sales charts, by the year 2005, Kodak was the #1 seller of digital cameras in the United States.
Wait, I want to make sure everyone heard that. By 2005, deep into the digital age, Kodak was #1 in sales.
#1 in the U.S. and I think #3 globally. They were moving units. They had the market share. So you absolutely cannot say they failed to adopt the technology. They adopted, they built it, they sold it.
Okay, so this is where the cognitive dissonance kicks in.
Yeah.
If they had the tech and they had the sales, why are we talking about their bankruptcy? If you're selling the most digital cameras, shouldn't you be winning the digital war?
That is the question.
Yeah.
And the answer isn't about pixels or megapixels. It's about something called service ecosystem strategy.
Okay, let's unpack that. Service ecosystem strategy. That sounds a little academic, so let's ground it.
Right. Essentially, Kodak's failure wasn't a failure of technology. It was a deeper failure to adapt its business ecosystem. They tried to force this new, disruptive technology digital into their old, comfortable business model.
They were trying to make the new world look exactly like the old world.
You've got it. And to really understand why they couldn't pivot, we first have to understand what they were protecting. We need to look at that perfect analog ecosystem they had built. This is the yellow box era.
I remember this so vividly. You didn't just buy a camera from Kodak. You bought into a whole cycle.
Right. An ecosystem, in business terms, is just a network of partners and technologies that all rely on each other. And Kodak had created an absolute masterpiece. Think about the classic razor and blade dynamic.
Give us a quick refresher on that.
Sure. You sell the razor handle for cheap, maybe even at a loss, because you know the customer has to keep coming back to you to buy the blades. Forever. For Kodak, the camera was just the handle.
And the blades were the film, the chemicals, and the photo paper.
And that's where the real money was. Massive margins. I mean, margins that companies today would kill for. But here's the key part of the ecosystem. The partners. Kodak wasn't doing this alone. They had this incredible symbiotic relationship with thousands of drugstores, mini labs, camera shops.
Oh, right. The 1-hour photo places, the little kiosk at the front of the CDS.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those retailers loved Kodak. Why? Because photo finishing, developing those prints, was one of the most profitable things a drugstore could do. It drove so much foot traffic.
Right, because you had to go in twice.
Precisely. You drop off the film, that's one visit. You come back to pick up the prints, that's a second visit. Maybe you buy a frame or an album or, a candy bar while you're there. It was a machine for generating retail traffic.
It was this beautiful loop. Buy film, shoot photos, drive to the store, drop it off, come back later, pay for your prints. And the end goal of photography, the entire point of taking a picture, was to hold a piece of paper in your hand.
That is the crucial insight. The Kodak moment was defined by the print, the physical object, their entire identity, their factories, their chemistry labs, their retail relationships, everything was optimized to get an image onto paper. That was the finish line.
So, what happens when digital enters the chat? Because suddenly you don't need film.
Well, this is where you see the whole ecosystem start to get disrupted. When digital cameras arrived, even the ones Kodak was selling, that symbiotic bond with the retailers it snapped.
Because if I have a digital camera, I don't need to go to the drugstore to buy film anymore.
You don't need film. And even if you do want to print a digital photo, the retailer doesn't have to be loyal to Kodak. They can use any printer, any paper, any ink. Kodak's moat, that protective barrier around their business, it just evaporated.
So the partners are leaving. The high-margin film sales are dropping off a cliff. Kodak sees this happening. They aren't stupid. They know they have to change strategy.
And they did try. This is the part of the story that gets overlooked. Kodak attempted what we now call servitization.
Servitization. Okay, that sounds like a corporate buzzword. Translate that for us.
It's actually a pretty common strategy. It's just the shift from selling products to selling solutions or outcomes. So instead of just selling you a box of film, I'm selling you the service of imaging. Kodak knew the hardware, the digital camera itself, was going to become a commodity.
Right. Prices would drop, margins would vanish, which they did.
Exactly. So Kodak thought, okay, we need to make money on services. Printing services, storage services, stuff like that.
That sounds smart. I mean, that's what they should have done, right? Move up the value chain?
On paper, yes. But here's where it gets so interesting and where that ecosystem trap snaps shut. They applied the wrong logic to their servitization. We call it print-centric logic.
They were still obsessed with the paper.
They could not let it go. They looked at a digital camera and they asked, how can we use this new device to get people to print more photos?
Instead of asking, how does digital change what people actually want to do with photos in the first place?
Precisely. They saw digital as just a new input device for their old output, the print. And you can see this in the products they launched. Do you remember those printer docks?
Vaguely. These were the little printers you physically docked your camera into.
Yes. Kodak sold millions of them. The idea was, you take a digital picture, you stick the camera on this little dock at home, and poof, out comes a 4x6 glossy print. They were trying to force the old behavior onto the new workflow.
And then there were the kiosks. I definitely remember those. The big yellow machines at the pharmacy where you'd stand for 20 minutes tapping on a screen.
They rolled out 10,000 of them. 10,000. The idea was, you take your memory card, you go to the store, just like in the old days, you plug it in, and you wait for your prints.
It's amazing when you look back at it. They were trying to perfectly recreate the one-hour photo experience, just with digital files instead of film.
They were digitizing the form, but they were desperately trying to keep the old analog monetization model. They wanted to sell you the special ink and the special paper at the kiosk.
But the world was already moving on. We didn't want to stand at a kiosk. And this leads us to what I think is the most shocking part of this whole story, the tragedy of Ofoto.
This is the aha moment. This is the smoking gun that proves it wasn't a tech failure, but a complete strategy failure.
So in 2001, this is way early, pre-Facebook, pre-iPhone, Kodak buys a startup called Ofoto.
It was an early cloud photo service. Cutting-edge stuff for the time. You could upload your digital images, store them, and share them with friends online.
Let that sink in for a second. They had the tech, they had the platform, they had the user base. They literally had Instagram 10 years before Instagram.
They did, but remember that print-centric logic. It infected everything. Kodak didn't treat Ofoto as a social platform. They treated it as a printing engine.
A printing engine?
Yeah. If you used Ofoto, which they later renamed Kodak Gallery, the entire experience was designed to push you towards one button. Print. Make a calendar. Make a mug. Make a photo book.
So their main metric of success wasn't how many people liked this photo or how many are sharing. It was, did we sell any ink and paper?
That was it. Do we move paper? They saw the sharing part as just a marketing funnel to drive print orders. They could not conceive of a photo having value if it just stayed on a screen.
That is just heartbreaking.
It is. Now, compare that to Instagram's insight. Instagram realized the value wasn't the physical object, The value was the network. The sharing was the product. The likes, the comments, that was the new Kodak moment.
And the numbers just tell the whole story. Let's go back to that timeline. 2012, Kodak is bankrupt. They have to sell off assets. They sell a photo or Kodak gallery to Shutterfly. Do we know for how much?
Less than $25 million.
Less than $25 million. And in that same month, Instagram, with 13 people, sells for $1 billion.
It's a valuation gap that perfectly illustrates the difference between the old ecosystem and the new one. Kodak had the tech. They had the users. But because their whole definition of value was tied to printing, they were sitting on a social media goldmine and treated it like a brochure for a print shop.
Wow. They missed the shift from product, the physical photo, to process, the experience of sharing.
That's a great way to put it. They missed the shift from owning the artifact to facilitating the connection.
So Kodak is struggling, trying to force people to print with these kiosks. And then 2007 happens, the asteroid hits the planet,
The iPhone.
the smartphone ecosystem, and this was the final blow.
It really was. Because suddenly the camera isn't just a camera anymore.
No, the camera became a feature of a computer that is permanently connected to the internet.
And this completely changes the job to be done, right? I mean, why do we even take photos now?
Right. In the analog era, the job of a photo was preserving a memory. You took a picture at a birthday to look at it 10 years later in an album. But in the smartphone era, the job became real-time communication. Look where I am right now. Look what I'm eating.
It became language, a visual language.
Exactly. And in that context, instant communication printing is actually friction. It just slows you down. If I want to show you my lunch, I'm not going to print a 4x6 and mail it to you. I'm going to text it or post it. The screen became the new medium.
And Kodak was still waiting for you to come to the kiosk.
So there's a concept that explains this, right? From a strategist named Ron Adner.
Yes, ecosystem-based disruption. It explains this perfectly. Kodak was focused so narrowly on their own tech transition, making digital cameras, but they missed the massive changes in the complementary tech around them.
The stuff that happens around the product.
Exactly. Fast broadband internet, high-resolution screens in every single pocket, social networks. All these things combined to make the screen superior to the print. Kodak was trying to own the whole pie, vertically integrated, in a world that now required platform partnerships.
They wanted to own the camera, the software, the printer, the paper. But in the smartphone world, Apple makes the phone, Verizon provides the data, Instagram provides the app. It's a distributed ecosystem.
And Kodak had no place in it because they insisted on being the whole system themselves. They wanted control in a world that was rapidly moving to open platforms.
This brings us to the big why. We've talked about the what and the how. But why couldn't a company with so many smart people, so much money, why couldn't they see this coming? Or if they saw it, why couldn't they act?
It really comes down to organizational inertia and fear.
Fear of what? They were the kings of the hill.
Fear of cannibalization. You have to remember, the profits from film were just astronomical. It was their golden goose, and management was terrified of doing anything that might kill the golden goose.
There's that famous anecdote about the first digital camera prototype, isn't there?
When Steve Sasson showed management that toaster-sized digital camera back in 1975, the reaction wasn't, wow, this is the future. It was, that's cute, but don't tell anyone about it.
Because if you tell people, they might stop buying our super profitable film.
Exactly. And then you add the pressure of being a publicly traded company. Wall Street demands quarterly profits. Film and print were delivering those profits today. Building a new network-based business like a social network would have meant taking huge losses for years.
Like Amazon or Facebook did. They burned cash for a long, long time.
Right. But Kodak felt they couldn't afford to do that. They had to feed the beast. They had dividends to pay. It's the classic innovator's dilemma. They were willing to change, but only if the change fit their old frame of reference. They could only see innovation if it ended with a physical print.
It's almost like they were gaslighting themselves. We are innovating. Look at our digital kiosk. Look at our printer docs.
While the world was literally burning down around them, they were optimizing the deck chairs on the Titanic.
So what does this all mean for us? For the person listening who isn't running a film company, it's easy to look back and point fingers, but I feel like we all do this in some way.
We do. The big lesson is that technology alone does not save you. You can have the best R&D lab in the world, and Kodak did, but if you don't align your entire business ecosystem with the new reality, you will fail.
Kodak optimized for a dying behavior printing, while the world moved to a new behavior sharing.
And that idea of servitization, if you're trying to shift from products to services, you have to truly understand the outcome the customer wants. Kodak thought they were in the imaging business. They thought the product was the picture.
But they should have realized they were in the storytelling business or the memory sharing business.
If they had defined themselves that way, then turning Ofoto into something like Instagram would have made total sense. They would have said, oh, our job is to help people share memories. Great, let's make the best app for that. But because they define themselves as we help people make prints, they just completely missed the revolution.
It really challenges you to think about how you define yourself. We define our jobs and our companies by what we make, not by the value we create for people.
Yeah, it's the trap.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with today, and it's a bit of a provocative one. I want you to look at your own industry, your own job, your own company, and ask yourself, what is the printing of your industry?
That is a great question.
What is the thing you are currently optimizing for? The thing that makes you the most money right now, the thing you are terrified to let go of? Because technology might be about to make that thing completely irrelevant.
And are you using new technology just to protect that old thing? Are you building digital kiosks, or are you using it to build something entirely new?
Kodak had the future in their hands, and they put it down because it didn't look like the past. Don't make that mistake. Keep asking the hard questions and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Digital Servitization Exchange podcast. We hope the insights sparked new ideas, challenged assumptions, and brought clarity to the evolving world of service and digital-driven business models. This podcast is grounded in extensive research across various fields, drawing on years of academic work, case studies, and cutting-edge publications. It also shaped by hands-on experience of our collaboration partners, whose real-world challenges and successes help us to translate theory into practice. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast and sharing it with colleagues who are navigating the civilization journey. Your support helps us continuing bridging high-quality research-based and practice-proven perspectives straight to your ears. Thank you for tuning in and see you in the next episode.